Welcome to Keep IT Healthy podcast, a show hosted by people making things happen in technology, aiming to optimize healthcare delivery, health, well-being, and fitness. My name is Jan Kamiński and I'm the co-founder of AppLover, a company dedicated to improving the quality of life with IT solutions and digital advisory. We started making this podcast to amplify great thinking to propel healthcare forward. Welcome everyone. Our guest today is Omar Mendoza, CEO of HDI Global. So hi Omar.
Hi,
Thanks for
Jan.
joining the podcast. Maybe we can start with a really quick one because your LinkedIn profile is quite impressive. 24 years of experience in insurance, leading and with a strong managerial background with international teams. As you said, and we were talking before, like with the proven experience in marketing and the strategy and sales and leading multicultural teams, basically. And as I said, it's impressive. But if you had to choose three of your superpowers, what would they be?
Well, first of all, thank you, Jan, for the invitation and this opportunity to talk a little bit about my career and some insights I have regarding my experience. Well, regarding the things I think were useful for me during my career were emotional intelligence. When you are working in insurance, and I will say in any line of business, any industry, you need to have emotional intelligence in order to focus more on solving the problems rather than creating problems.
Right.
Working in Mexico, in Latin America, we usually are more emotional than other parts in the world. That's why it's so important, because we can focus having emotional intelligence in the goals, in the way to achieve the goals, and not just get stuck thinking about emotional things. The other thing I will say, humility, because sometimes ego is good for entrepreneurs, at the beginning when you need to build, to negotiate, and so on, but it's not good for managing people. In my opinion, nowadays we should have a very flat organizations where everybody are at the same level, just with different functions. And that's my case, and that's the way I live my career right now. It's like just being one more of the teammates, but with some different functions. So humility for me is critical. And the other one is execution, because we usually tend to plan a lot, think about projects and opportunities in the market and a lot of analysis and so on. But if you do not execute, those thoughts, those dreams, you name it, do not become reality. So for me, it's critical to execute,
Right.
to
The
bring to
execution
the
is the
real world your ideas.
right, right.
If you are in doubt, if you think, should I do it or not, you just do it, because if you do it, you are going to get experience, not just to still thinking about a project.
Right, but that's interesting. Could you tell us more about your background story and like what brought you to this particular career path in insurance?
Yes, well, if you're not part of an insurance family, usually you start working for insurance kind of as a mistake. And that was my case. I studied mechanical engineer. I was working in a family business in which we design and produce belt conveyors to transport ore or different materials. But it was a very repetitive way of calculation, of designing, and so on. And all of a sudden, a friend told me, Omar, ICA, which is a very important company in Mexico, focused in engineering, are
Mhm.
looking for engineers. So I decided to go with him to give our resume. At that time, it was not like sending your LinkedIn profile or sending an email. It was you print your resume and you give it to the
Right.
employer. And later on, this friend told me, there's an insurance company who's looking for engineers as well. And I was like, are you sure? Insurance? Are we are going to sell insurance? It doesn't make sense for me. But that insurance company was very close to ICA. So we decided to go there. I gave my resume, and afterwards they called me and they offered me a position, but starting 3 months studying insurance. And I was like, okay, salary is very good, and I'm going to study insurance is good for me. So I started studying insurance, and I realized that insurance is not only life insurance or health insurance or automobile insurance. Insurance is broader, and I realized that insurance also cover very large risk industries, uh, cat, not cat risks, and so on. So it was very interesting for me because you really need to have at least some background regarding numbers to work in insurance, because you need to calculate certain risks, to understand certain models, and so on. So it was very good for me because I could still use my mathematical part of the brain, but also start developing the social part, the marketing part. You need also to read a lot in insurance, all the clauses
Right.
and so on, and to understand them very well. And I like to read. So it was just some part of being lucky to start working for this industry since
Uh-huh.
1998.
Okay, nice. That's probably a long story, right?
Yeah, right.
But you're currently a CEO, and I know you have so much experience. But we'll start with something more personal. How do you balance, the demands of your role with your personal life and leisure activities, etc.?
Well, in my opinion, all the companies, despite of the size or the complexity of the companies, are a kind of a monster that is going to eat you unless you put on your own side a balance, a limit, and try to be also very efficient. For example, since I start working for insurance, I like to start very early in the morning, 7 a.m., and stop early. Mexican standard, 5 a.m. is early, 5 p.m., sorry.
Yeah.
In my opinion, is that you have to all the time bear in mind that if you do not have a good life balance, you start to deteriorate your own performance. I realized that whenever I get good sleep, when I go jogging, when I go with my friends or to the cinema and so on, then I rest. My mind rests very well, and the other day when I wake up, I have a lot of energy, a focus, so my performance is very good. Whenever I stop working very late, 10, 11 at night, the next day it's a nightmare and my performance is very reduced. So in my opinion is focusing, just having very well schedules in your work side, but also in the personal side, trying to balance work, the physical part, the
Hmm.
spiritual part, and the creative part. In my opinion, that those are the four main fields we should be all the time trying to balance. And if sometimes you need to work more, then you are going to need to train more.
Yeah.
When you rest a little bit on the work side, then you have opportunity to do other things, like leisure, like spending time with the family and so on. But after all, what I want to tell you is this just a matter of taking a decision, and nobody's going to look after you and telling you, you are burning out. You need to admin yourself all the time.
Hmm. But so also probably effectiveness. But when I was doing the research, I checked that you speak 5 languages, for instance, and you're saying that you're working a lot, etc. Like, A, how did you do it? And could you share some insights on the multilingual ability and how it contributed to your professional success and career in general?
In my opinion, trying to learn other languages is kind of showing respect to other countries when you are interacting with them. It is not necessary that you know that you speak 100%. Actually, our own mother language, we do not speak 100%, but we can communicate, and at least we try to communicate with people from other countries on their same language. That allows us to try to understand also the culture, the mindset, because language, in my opinion, is very intertwined with our behavior and so on. So for me, trying to understand better other cultures, one of the key the keys to open the doors of such cultures is the language. For example, when I spent some time in Brazil, one of the things that was quite important was to speak Portuguese, because people assume that the Brazilians understand very well Spanish or English, and in not all the cases is that the reality.
Right.
And being such a huge country, and you arrive and you cannot say at least bom dia or something in Portuguese, then the people from Brazil will say, well, how can I open with somebody who's coming from abroad and he
Yeah.
doesn't care about my own language?
You're external, right? I
Yeah,
mean, they're just more comfortable.
yeah, right. And working in this industry, insurance is since some years ago, several international companies bought local companies. So they need people who speak English in order to export best practices, to understand the culture and the values of the companies and so on. So it's critical to speak English in our industry. And then you start with other kind of languages whenever you start having interaction with other countries in tourism or in business. But
Hmm.
all the time you have the opportunity, and nowadays it's quite easy. I had the opportunity to interact with some people of Ukraine in Ukraine in Poland, and they didn't speak English nor other language, so I used a translator online, and it was easy to communicate. But at the end of the day, you need to open the door
Right.
through the languages, through technology, or through something in order to communicate.
But you mentioned the culture as well, and and you also mentioned that you spent some time in Brazil, and as I know, it was few years, right?
Right, 4 years.
Okay, and you were in charge of marine specialty. And which are the differences, in your opinion, among Mexico and Brazil? And how did you adapt to such different working culture? And are they different or not really?
Yes, at the beginning, when you start working in Brazil or in any other country, I will say that the first days, as you are in the starting process, you don't see a lot of differences. But as soon as you start, the time is going on, and you start to deep down in the local culture, you start to realize that there are huge differences. In my opinion, when I look backwards, when I remember I started working in Brazil, I was assuming that they were kind of similar like the Mexicans, just speaking another language. But when I start interacting with them, I realized that there are some critical differences. For example, and roughly speaking, on a general level, is some of the people from Brazil, they are quite very involved on an emotional level with their own jobs. So when you are talking about a business, you're not talking about just about business. You are talking about also the person by itself. So if you say, I think you made a mistake, you are not saying, as happening perhaps in other cultures, no, this is a mistake, just we have to change it. No, they take it on a very personal level. So you have to be very careful about how you interact. Obviously, you have some tolerance as you are a foreign, for
Foreign.
the
Hmm.
foreigners. So they say, okay, well, he's Mexican. It doesn't matter what he says. But after a while, you realize that they are very emotional, roughly speaking, and also they like a lot the relationship part more than the Mexicans. So you need to gain trust. It's not like, oh, this is business. We just stick to the plans and so on. No, you need to interact with them. There are also very hierarchicals. That is something that I changed, at least with my team. It was like, the head is very far away. He has his own schedule. He doesn't interact with the team unless we are talking about business. But that's something that I changed because, as I told you at the beginning, I really truly believe in flat organizations without a lot of hierarchical stuff. and that's something that we have to work with and change. And I will say the last example as a difference is that the Mexicans are very aware about who's hiring the people, who is the boss, and so on. In the case of Brazil, they usually see the foreign companies as companies that are coming to their countries to take advantage of their natural resources and so on. I think they
Mhm.
have that in their history.
Right.
So they really need to understand that you are not just there to make just business, to get money, to take advantage of the resources, but you are also willing to make them grow, to have a very good career path, to hire people instead of dismiss people, that you are
Mhm.
trying to protect their country and not just taking advantage of it. So in my opinion, the challenge, and I will say in all the cultures, is not just understanding the current culture that is being shown on a daily basis, but also trying to understand the history of each of the countries in order to understand the mindset. Which, in my opinion,
Mhm.
when you try to understand the mindset, then you will realize that we are such different in so many ways.
But but this experience in different business cultures like Brazil, for instance, you mentioned you introduced something to this culture, but did it influence your approach to leading, HDI Global in Mexico?
Yes, actually, you learn a lot when you are in charge of such a large team. Being a foreigner, trying to, well, when I arrived to Brazil, I already speak a little bit Portuguese. Then I improved my Portuguese proficiency, but understanding the language, understanding the culture, uh, bringing new ideas to get the goals we need to achieve in that country. Then you get back to your home country with different ideas and also kind of a detox from your own culture. When
Hmm.
you are abroad, you have the opportunity to really open to understand other ways of seeing things, of living things. And when you get back to Mexico, then you start to analyze your own culture and decide whether are the things you want to keep and which are the ones that you are bringing from abroad. It's kind of a blend. It's any kind of experience, always helps in any kind of challenge. But these major experiences living in other countries and such a different countries and very far away. Sao Paulo is 10 hours distance via airplane, so it's like going to Europe. It's not quite close as people could think.
Hmm.
So getting back to Mexico with that experience helped me a lot, being or or improving this I will say the skills that we mentioned at the beginning, the emotional intelligence, being more open to understand your team, your culture in Mexico, the good things, the things that are not so good, quotation mark, your humility, realizing that you depend as a leader in the role of a leader, you depend on your team. It's not that you're going to make the changes, it's your team who makes the changes, it's your team who executes.
Yeah.
And the last part, the execution.
Yeah.
The only thing that you have when you get back to Mexico is trying to push your own team to do the things, to realize the plans.
But since we are in this topic of culture, as a leader, and how did you foster the work environment? Did you promote anything in particular? Like, what was your secret sauce?
Yes, in my opinion, is to have an adult approach. It's funny because I found in different places, I also had some experience in Colombia and other countries. And I will say that we are adults and sometimes we behave as children. Uh, Sometimes we not need to get a job done and we don't do it in a very good way or efficient way. We receive feedback and we easily get offended as a child. We want a company to take care of us. Getting back to your question about how to get life balance and professional
Hmm.
balance, is because we are adults. Nobody's going to look after us. Like, you need to take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself. You have to be an adult, and also to understand that there are other people who think in a different way. We talk about a lot of about inclusivity now, but in my opinion, it's more focused on gender, on race, and so on.
Hmm.
But I'm always talking about mind inclusivity, mindset inclusivity. There are people who think or behave in different ways, which not necessarily are bad ways. Actually, in some cases, are more efficient than
Right.
our own behaviors. So to be inclusive regarding the mindset, to be inclusive regarding any other topic, to promote a culture in which each and everybody is an adult who can interact with people. You don't need to get along with somebody to comply with a project, to live next to somebody who thinks different, who is different physically and mentally. If you're an adult, you can solve it, you can interact, you can receive feedback, you can provide feedback without being unnecessarily harsh. So,
Yeah.
in my opinion, is fostering a culture in which we all are adults. We all have to take care of each other. We all know that if we do not perform on a very good way, then we are impacting the result of everybody.
Yeah.
So that's my way in which I say, acting all the time and thinking all the time that I am an adult, and all my teammates are adults as well.
Hmm. That's interesting, actually, and quite smart. We talked a lot about culture and behaviors, and that's important, obviously, and these are important directions. But I want to come back to the tech side and tech aspects of your industry. So, in your opinion, what will be the most important direction of the development of digitalization in insurance sector, obviously, in the coming years?
Well, I will say that as a sector, we are behind the insurance industry. Usually in different countries, we are behind what is happening in other industries. When you look, for
Okay.
example, at the banks have evolved a lot. They have apps, they have a lot of security. They can interact with their clients on different platforms and so on. As an industry in insurance, we start doing that, but some years ago. And the thing is that technology is, in my opinion, is something that we need to use in a more efficient way as a sector. With technology, we can gather information, and when you are working in insurance, if you have enough information from several years, then perhaps you can try to find predictive factors which will lead you to improve your risk taking decisions and
Hmm.
your pricing decisions when you negotiate an insurance policy. Nevertheless, as a sector, we haven't invested, as in my opinion, we should have done several years ago. Now we are talking about several models in which we are investing in order to try to better understand the NatCat risks. This kind of risks are changing. The hurricanes in the past behave in some way. Now they are behaving in other ways. Also, as a society, we have changed. We have also involved larger values.
Hmm.
It's different the cost of a home I will say, in Cancun in the past, and nowadays is very expensive. So if you have a hurricane hitting the Yucatan Peninsula, then your loss will be larger, not because of the hurricane could be stronger, but also because if you have more accumulation of larger values in certain places. So trying to improve our models, trying to improve our customer experience, it's hard in some cases. For example, in HDR Global, we are very focused on companies which are quite different one from each other. If you go to retail business on the insurance side, I wouldn't say it's more easier, but you have the volume and you have the risk more homogeneous, risks that resemble more each other, so you can kind of predict the behavior or the final outcome of the losses that you will have. In the case of the industry, each and every industry is quite different, so it is something complex to do that. As a organization, we got involved in different projects. We have an area called Things, in which they are developing flooding sensors, for instance, that you can use in order to immediately have an alert whenever you have a water leakage.
Hmm.
So in some cases, and they put us an example in Germany, it was a church in which they start to have a leakage, they start flooding, and if they didn't have this kind of sensors, they will only identify the flooding after everything was done, was flood. So with this kind of sensors, we can anticipate, we can reduce the losses. That is something that we are also working and analyzing in our market in Mexico. The use of IoT or IoT, Industrial Internet of Things, in which
Hmm.
we will try to use sensors in order to get information to alert our clients about deviations and so on, but also in order to better understand the behavior of the risks. And in that way, we can improve our products, we can improve our pricing, and so on.
But in general, so you essentially use data to improve your offer to the end client, right?
Yes, at this level, we're talking about companies, because on the retail side, you can
Yeah,
also improve the experience when you are buying an insurance. You can go online if you want to buy an automobile insurance, compare with different companies, and,
yeah.
and buy the insurance. But with these other kind of insurance coverages, which are more complex, it's not easy to standardize that in a way in which you just jump into a system and get your policy. The values are huge, which are involved. The operations of the insurers are quite complex that you cannot, at least at this stage, unless we develop artificial intelligence, at this stage, we cannot just insure a large company with an automatic process. But certainly, we can also improve the customer experience by, issuing in a better way the policy, sending it on a digital basis instead of printing 100 pages of a policy and so on.
Yeah. But okay, so you mentioned the lack of digitalization as a challenge, but what are the other challenges and the opportunities maybe for the insurance market today, even coming from tech?
I guess my opportunity, and I will say that again, is having access to the big data in a way in which we can understand the trends, and
Hmm.
understanding the trends, then you can design a better product that fits better the operation of a specific client. You can reduce or improve in some cases the prices, because you have more information. You don't Whenever you don't have enough information, sometimes you have to cover a little bit what your models are stating, because the models are not 100% accurate. Those models are just references. So if you have enough information, historical information, predictive modeling, and so on, then you will necessarily improve your products and your pricing, which usually
Hmm.
is one of the main things that our insurers are looking for.
Okay. And in the HDI Global, you're focusing on growing locally, but also you foster a lot of international programs. And could you elaborate more on this approach and why and how you
Yes,
do it? Hmm.
yes. In the past, Mexico was seen as a service country, because in Germany and in some other countries in Europe, they were interacting with different large clients that also operate in
Hmm.
Mexico, and they require a policy in our country to comply with the local regulation, but also to have the local service to attend all the claims and so on. But I will say that a couple of years ago, our company decided that our market is quite attractive, and we became as a growth to core market, meaning that now the focus is to grow in the local business. So we start opening different operations. We have what we call property, which is fire insurance, casualty or liability, in which you cover losses that you make to a third party, constructional risk, covering risk of constructions, and we opened marine cargo insurance last year, and by the end of last year we opened financial lines, in which we include products like directors and officers to cover the liability of directors and officers and other professionals as architects, engineers, and so on. And we're also covering a recall, which is whenever you have a product that has something that goes wrong and you need to take that product from the market and repair it or change the design, we also cover that kind of risks. So we start opening that line of businesses and start getting more local business. But also in Mexico, there are very large companies that decided to explore other markets and started to invest outside Mexico. There are several companies investing in Central America or in South
Mhm.
America or Europe or Asia, you name it. So depending upon the profile of the client, we have different solutions. As we are a company that has global operations,
Mhm.
we are present we have presence in more than 140 70 countries and so on. So we take advantage of that opportunity that we have having different offices throughout the world. And what we do is negotiate in Mexico the whole program to cover all the assets of the insureds in all the world. So in that way, the local client can have, first of all, understand the terms and conditions that will apply in any part of the world, understand what is going to be the premium that he will have to pay, but that premium benefit by having the scale of covering all the countries in one
Yeah.
single policy in Mexico, and policies in other countries to comply with local regulations and provide the service required by the insurers. So we are fostering these kind of solutions for international or clients, Mexican clients that go abroad, investing abroad Mexico.
I'll tackle this thing about digitalization because you also we kind of went into this field. And in your opinion, how can the management of the work and the performance of employees be improved by IT solutions, like for instance mobile apps, or any different?
Well, I will say that there are two ways, in my opinion, to improve. The first one is that the employees do not engage in workload that does not necessarily add a very good value, that
Hmm.
is just admin and on a repetitive way in which there's nothing to add, and a solution, an IT solution or technology will be more efficient than a human.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, in that way, you can use technology in order to spend some time of the employee to really engage in where the employee makes the difference. And on the other hand, whenever you have a very good IT tools, you become more efficient. For example, nowadays, just think about before the pandemic in Mexico, it was not very common or part of the culture to have a hybrid ways of work, at least in our industry. It was that you have to go to the office, that's the way things are done, and that's it. After the pandemic, with the help of technology, you can interact with everybody anytime with your mobile phone, you name it. So you become more efficient. You can help the employees to be more efficient and also to have a better life balance. Just think about in Mexico City, which is a very large city, commuting, you spend a lot of time and if you commute in your own automobile, then you also contaminate and so on. But if you can work from your home using the technology in a very efficient way without any kind of disruption and so on, then you become more efficient, because the time you spend in commuting, you do it in thinking other ways to do your job, or actually, answering emails, whatever, you name it. So, in my opinion, technology improved in several ways our lifestyle. And in some other cases, some of the processes are faster and more reliable when you are using technology.
But under your leadership, HDI has worked towards implementing multinational insurance programs, and you developed a tool that to enable customers to manage them. So, could you tell us something more about this?
Yes, that tool is the IP web. This tool is quite important, because in that way you can just jump into a platform in order to follow up your international program. Just
Hmm.
to put an example, I'm the risk manager of a very large company in Mexico, and I want to know whether the policy in Peru has been issued. So I just jump into this system and check if that the policy has been issued, if the policy has been paid, in order not to risk the coverage, if the my branch in Peru has claims or not, and then you have a overview of the all your operations on the insurance part. So in that way, you become more efficient. In the past, you have to call to the insurance executive, and the insurance executive will tell you, well, I'm going to call my contact in Peru, but due to time schedule, tomorrow I will reply to you, and then just send an email following up, and so on. With this kind of tools, you just don't need to depend in anybody. If it
Hmm.
is 1 a.m. and you couldn't sleep and you want to check your program, you just jump into the platform and check out, have
That's
a
it.
global vision of your international insurance program.
Okay. And you said that at the beginning. So the IoT tools like flood sensors, you just mentioned some of it, but like, would you reveal more details on how it works and how it provides additional value to the client and you?
Yes, I will talk about the sensors developed by things in this operation from our talents group.
Hmm.
And they focus on sensors in which they put in different places in certain facilities. It could be industry, as the example I put in the some minutes ago. It was a church and so on. But you can use these sensors put in places where usually people do not have access or do not visit very often. That kind of sensors, whenever they detect that there's humidity, they send an alert to a mobile phone, just as an SMS or as a WhatsApp message, and they receive the message, and then you know that something is going wrong, because some of the sensors are sending you the signal that there's water,
Hmm.
and if you locate those sensors, the app allows you to know exactly the place in which that sensor is located, so you don't have to spend a lot of time. Just think about a very large premises of warehouses and so on. You will go directly to the place where the flooding is happening, so you
Hmm.
will act in a very fast way and don't lose your time, and then you can repair whatever is happening. There are other kind of sensors that I have seen in the market, that they use kind of frequencies that you put in the pipeline, and they also detect whenever there's water flowing, and then send you a message. This could also be applied on homeowners, for example. You go out of vacation, then all of a sudden the water is running under your pipelines. Something is happening. So you have time to call your administrator or a friend or family relative or somebody that can go to your apartment and or house and check what is happening. We have seen that the most of the damages regarding this kind of silence flooding is because
Mhm.
you realize that the flooding, you detect the flooding after 2 3 days, and you
Yeah,
can't do anything afterwards, you know.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But it sounds kind of like from the future. But if we are talking about this, I'll read you something, and I wanted to like get your comment. Okay, I'll read you a
Okay.
forecast, and basically it says that for the insurance industry, 2023 will be a challenge in terms of risk assessment and complex claims handling. The industry anticipates that inflation will continue to have a significant impact on labor and material costs and higher claims, forcing more frequent sum insured updates. So, how would you comment on this forecast?
Yes, that is something that I will say that we are seeing. Inflation is impacting several countries, U.S., Mexico, and Europe, and so on.
Even Poland, yeah.
Last year, I visited Copenhagen, and the taxi driver was telling me that the price of the electricity and so on just rocked, rise
Yeah.
crazy, like 5 times and something like that. So
Yep.
when you look at this scenario, when you are having a large inflation, then one of our main concerns is what is going to happen with the claims, because the usually the insurance coverage is designed to help the client get back to the previous
State.
positions he had
Mhm.
before the claim, before the disaster happened, the fire, the earthquake,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
So you have a certain price right now, but if the loss happens after 1 year, then instead of being a loss of 100,000, it's going to be
20.
130.
Hmm.
So one of our main concerns is how can we uh, include or factor in this phenomenon of inflation in our pricing in order to have enough premium and being able to pay for the losses. The basic principle of the insurance is many pay the losses of a few,
Okay, yeah,
uh,
sure.
and in this way, how come an insurance company has to be proactive in order to put this new factor? Because it's been a while since we have a very stable inflation, but now, after different things happen on a macroeconomic level, we are suffering of this. So how can we include this in our calculation of the pricing? How can we tell our clients, you have a certain risk because the responsibility of providing or confirming that some insures to the insurance company is insured, the client. So we how can we provide to our clients a heads up that they need to revise whether their values, their sum insures, the values that they got from the insurance are accurate, or they need to increase their insurance level amounts in order to, when they have a claim, they don't have a coverage gap or impact due to they didn't inform the more on a more realistic way their values,
But
because if they don't do that, they have the risk of having a loss beyond
yeah,
the
beyond the
limits
original.
they hire,
But so it's about the forecast and the prediction, and that's the issue here as well.
Yes, depending on the line of business, but just to put an example, on property insurance, fire. If you tell me that your building value is 100 million euros, okay, that's in the policy. I apply my rate, and this is your premium, and that's it. But if it turns out that is 120 million the real worth of your building, then perhaps you're going to have an impact when you have a claim, because you were not paying for the 100% value of the building. It's something a little bit more complex, but just to put an example of
Hmm.
if you hire a marine cargo transportation coverage, and you say, I am transporting mobile phones. The value of the mobile phones is $1 million, and it turns out that it was 1,500,000, and you
Yeah.
have a loss, and the limit of the policy is 1 million. I'm going to pay you 1 million because that's what you say as insured, and then
Mhm.
you will have an impact whenever you have a claim. So it's something complex. It's something that the insurer needs to be aware of in order
Mhm.
to provide the accurate insurable values. And from our side, it's also trying to see how can we deal with this, bear in mind that we usually provide coverage for several years, and when the claims come, it's going to have a different cost.
Yeah, but okay, but if we're talking, if we're at it, so like prediction and forecast, and what will be in the future, I know it's a buzzword lately, but do you think that AI and prediction and those solutions might change mm, the way of thinking and the insurance sector, or influence these problems that you just mentioned in the coming years, or not really for now?
I think in the coming years, I will say that the change started is something that we see. Uh, we see that there are new approaches regarding technology, insurtechs, improving our models, and so on. But when this technology gets better, 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 I think that our job is going to be also better. Our solutions are going to be better, and it's going to be different. Just think about in the past, I'm not talking about 1998 when I started working for the insurance industry. You sent a quotation through a fax.
Yeah.
The timing was different, the error margins were different, the expectations of service from our insurers were different. Nowadays it's like if it has always been, but it's not the case. Nowadays when you talk about communicating with an insurer via WhatsApp, via email,
Yeah.
buying a policy online and so on, several years ago it was impossible future.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen. But in my opinion, it's starting to be the changes are coming in a faster way. So when it comes the artificial intelligence, a real develop in our insurance industry, I think it's going to happen in the next years.
So, insurances became more accessible. That will be also your point.
Yes, more accessible. Uh,
But through
one of
tech, that was the point. Like through tech, so tech-enabled services like insurances, or no, or
Yes, yes. Some of these opportunities have been developed. There are certain clients that in the past didn't have access to insurance. Now they do. Uh, we at least in Mexico we have a lot of discussions in the AMIS, the Mexican Insurance Association, about how we can get access to a broader population. With certain solutions, very specific. I will say that massive ways to handle the insurance to protect people, and it's through the technology. Otherwise, the cost is so high that the insurance premium wouldn't be attractive to be paid for certain parts of the population. So
Mhm.
we really need to take advantage of technology.
But okay, but back, like if we are at the subject of AI machine learning, do you see any, because of course there are a lot of ways on how can you implement it, etc. But do you see any threats? But for your particular industry, for insurance in general, or not really?
Threats are, and many of our threats in insurance are quite similar of other industries. Hackers and so on, the cyber risk for us is large. The risk is large, so that's why we protect a lot. As an
Yeah.
insurance industry, we all the time receive certain attacks, as is happening in other industries. But we also, in some cases, provide actually the cyber insurance. For instance, in order to protect our clients from these kind of risks. And on the other side also, and this being a very historical risk from on the insurance side, is the fraud. Uh, we need to improve our tools in order to identify frauds coming from different places. In some cases, people trying to get coverage when they already have a loss. In other cases, people who are trying to get the personification of other people in order to buy insurance and try to get the payment of a claim and so on. So I will say that yes, there's a risk, and also we have another risk coming from the risks we take. For
Yeah.
example, on the marine side, in the past we were discussing about piracy, but not the usual piracy of a pirate coming to your boat and so on, but a cyber piracy in which unmanned boats, for instance, could be hijacked with technology. And if
Hmm.
that happens, it's something that we had several discussions, because those kind of risks, in some cases, some companies insure. So we have the risk, certain risk coming from our own technology, and the risk that we take from our insurers from their own technology.
And you said that about data, that data might influence the insurance in general. But how do you appreciate this idea of promoting pro health behaviors and thus affecting the amount of the insurance premium and fees? What do you think about that?
Well, in my opinion, that's the way we should have done all the time. But in the past, we didn't have the technology. Now,
Hmm.
if you are somebody who's taking care of your health, that you do exercise, that you try to eat well, that you carry out a checkup very often, and so on, then your risk, your theoretical risk, is lower than any other that is not doing that. So you
Yeah,
you
right.
you, you should have a benefit on the premium and coverage side, as you, as a risk, you are a lower risk than other ones. So in my opinion, uh, that could be also the future. The discussion, at least that we have in Mexico, is about inclusion, because when you have the technology, you have the information, but then you can also realize that there are other predictive factors. For example, gender. In Mexico,
Yeah.
usually the health insurance has different prices depending if you are a male or female. But
Hmm.
that could be a matter of discussions whether
Yeah,
that's
if that's fair. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
sure.
that's fair or not. It also consider age, for instance.
Right.
Uh,
Hmm.
could make sense, but also it could be considered as discrimination and so on. So
Ageism, etc. Yeah, right. Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
so it's complex. But if you have data and you say, I don't care about the gender, I don't care about the age, I don't care about anything, I just care about the state of the organism of the people that I am insuring. This boy, girl, whatever, is doing
Yeah.
exercise, is taking care, is not smoking, then
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
shall have a benefit from the insurance side, and you can only get that in an efficient and in a very costly way, or low cost way, through the technology.
Yeah, but that's the same case with the insurance for automobiles, right? So, for example, if I'm not using my car too often, but you have this data, maybe my insurance would be different than the I don't know, a truck driver. But I know these are just an ideas because in practice there are not many, let's say, implementations of it. But do you think that's the direction we'll be going this
I,
way?
I think that's the direction, because the technology is improving. For example, I like to train, and I have an app in which my trainer, my coach, put a, you have to do this during this day, and
Yeah.
I put my watch and I train with BPMs and so on,
Yeah.
and my health is being monitored by my coach with different algorithms coming from my watch.
Right.
So technology is improving, and in my opinion, in that way, if we embed that in our insurance models, we will have better ways in recognizing the good risk compared to not so good risk.
Yeah. The
Some
better.
people drinking, smoking, don't doing exercise. Well, that guy should pay more than
More for the, yeah.
plan. I
But
think
does it
that's the direction.
but does it mean, or it does a threat that it means lower income for the insurance companies, or it's just tailor made and some will pay more, some will pay less? Like, what would be your?
Well, in my opinion, is to trust in the technical part of the premium calculation, meaning that if the risk is lower and you charge lower premium, it is going to be balanced because the risk is lower. So the probability of having a claim is lower. If you have a high risk and you charge high premiums, then it is also, you get also a balance because you are matching the risk with the enough premium. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to say is that on the insurance side, as long as you have the accurate information, you do the correct analysis, then
Mhm.
if you have a claim or not is something that is going to be compensated with your own portfolio.
Yeah, but okay, so but you also mentioned this watch and the data that you can get from there. But how can IT solutions in general, especially popularizing the taking care of your health of each insured person, affect the business results of insurance companies? I mean, that they probably will. And so what would be the outcome? Like, is it because I asked you about the threat, but do you think so? So your opinion is in general that it will improve the general, of course, the from the client perspective probably, but from yours as well.
Yes, for us as well, because as the example you put, no, regarding automobile insurance, uh, if I'm not using my car, then the premium is lower. Yes, it's lower, and the probability that something happened to your car parking in a garage is quite lower than being in the street. So it is compensated because if the risk improves, then the premium have room to improve as well because the risk is lower.
We were talking about multiple examples, but could you name a few of your favorite examples how tech improved your sector? It can be a mobile app, a web app, a solution. How your favorite case,
Well, there are several examples, but I can put an example regarding health insurance. You have everything, all the information in your mobile. If you require medical attention, then you just jump into the app, and then you have the different doctors you can contact. Then, if you arrive to the hospital, then you can prove that you have insurance, and they
Mhm.
get all the information immediately in your mobile phone, and then you get all the attention and everything through an app. In the
Mhm.
past, just to call somebody to explain that you have a policy, provide the number of the policy,
Yeah.
and then what is happening to you, and then you fill up a format and so on. The experience was quite different. If you have an emergency, you have your mobile phone, then you get the medical attention, and in a very speedy way.
Okay, and
That's just one of several examples. We have clients, for example, that transport goods, and all of a sudden they require a proof of insurance, and we can send a certificate through an email or WhatsApp, you name it, and then they can prove that they have insurance on a global basis.
and are you working on any exciting new projects right now, but yours? And how do you think that will help people or your sector?
Yes, we're working in locally. I cannot provide a lot of details, but we're working in a project in which we're going to involve IoT with
Mm-hmm.
policies in order to, first of all, send an alert to our clients when something is going wrong with the risk,
Mm-hmm.
and on the other hand, allowing us to get the information, start accumulating the information. So in the near future, we will have a understanding a better way the risk of these clients. As soon as we launch it to the market, I will tell you. But yes,
Okay.
we are working with this mainly with sensors, I will say,
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out how to interact with IIoT, with
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
our policies and our
Yeah.
service. One of my main concerns when you're working in the insurance industry is that sometimes our insurers do not really feel our service or understand our service, and mainly the ones who do not have claims very often.
Mm-hmm.
It's very abstract when you say that you are the first service I providing to you is a risk transfer. You are
Mm-hmm.
transferring me a risk. You are free of that risk, financial risk.
Yeah.
You are sending that financial risk to me, but some of our insurers do not feel that. My bet is that with technology, is going to be more tangible because they are going to get access to more information, services, and
Yeah.
more kind of a partnership approach from our side, using the technology instead of
Mm-hmm.
just waiting to have a claim and receiving the money, and then you will say, well, yes, I
Yeah.
hired an insurance company, I received money. But our idea is that the insurer feels that he's protected since the beginning, and that he has additional services because of he hired a policy with HDI Global. If feel it since the beginning, and not
Mm-hmm.
just an abstract that you are transferring me a risk. If you are from the insurance sector, then it's very easy for you to understand that you are transferring a risk, and that's the service
Yeah.
we're providing. But when it comes from the insured side, it's like, I'm paying, I have no losses. I remember
Mm-hmm.
in the past when I was starting my career, it was an insured claiming that, the insurance is useless because I'm not sick. I have been paying a premium of health insurance, and I'm healthy, and we are like, well, the best scenario is that you don't have to use your insurance policy because that means that you don't have any problem.
Yeah.
But in
Yeah.
case you do, the
Then
risk
we.
is not on your shoulders, it's in
Yeah.
our shoulders. So that part is a little bit tricky to the insurers to understand. And in my bet is that with
Mhm.
technology, it's going to be more tangible for them.
But it seems like it seems like a fair deal if a client or customer agrees to send you some data and you can custom made the offer and like based on his needs and the risk, you can actually manage the risk more accurately. That's a fair deal.
Yeah, right. And that's something that we try to foster all the time. Uh, some of our insurers do not have enough technology or historical records that can send to us in order to help us in a better way to measure the risk and so on. So in many cases, we depend on the information that the insurer has. And
Yeah.
usually in Mexico, and I will say in certain countries of Latin America, the the insurance industry do not have a large penetration.
Hmm.
Sometimes people think about the insurance just at the very last minute, or when they already have a claim.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So for us,
My case
trying
actually.
to foster, try to buy a policy, send me the information, and we also have a lot of anti-money laundering laws in
Yeah.
Mexico.
Yeah.
So if you want to hire a policy, then you have to provide me a lot of information, uh,
First.
who I'm going to pay, are you paying your taxes, stuff like that, so it's quite complex to sell a policy. So in my opinion, in the future with technology, you will have information available, so you are not going to depend on the information sent by the insured. You are going to have access. I know this insured. You are going to have databases and so on, very accurate, where the claims the insured have, problems that they have, more information to find out predictive factors and so on. But that comes with technology. Nowadays, is you depend on the information sent by the insured,
Yeah.
and an insurance that not necessarily has the culture to buy an insurance policy.
So data and data enablement and in general transfer, in your opinion, will be the technological development of the insurance sector in the next 3 to 5 years. That would
Yeah,
be one.
yeah,
Mhm.
right. That's my opinion. And who knows, in some years now, we're gonna see that, but this is changing and changing in a very fast way.
Yeah, and we always ask this. We always ask our guests about advices. But like, if you were to give 3 pieces of advice for people who design IT innovations for the insurance sector, so what what should they focus on?
In my opinion, the
Yeah,
first thing and the most important one is to understand the insurance business, because I have seen a lot of insurtechs very expert on the technology side, but without knowledge on
on
how
the
the
domain.
insurance industry operates, and
Yeah,
and without any knowledge of our core business. So uh, usually they just get part of the understanding of the business, develop a tool, and all of a sudden they realize that it's not very easy or useful,
to implement that.
because
Yeah,
the business operates in a very different way. This industry, I will say, this is a little bit weird, because it's not like other industries. You close the books at the end of your year, you lose, you gain money, and that's it.
Mhm.
No, in insurance industry, you close December 31st, 2022, and after 5, 10 years, you will know which was your real result of 2022,
Yeah,
December
that's true.
31st, if you're lucky, because a
Yeah,
claim
yeah.
can you can have a claim for
Come back
7
after
years.
years. Yeah,
You Many things can happen. You can receive a notification that the insured didn't like the payment he received. He wants to make a challenge of that, and many things can happen. So we live in projections. That's why the importance of the data accuracy and the predictive factors and the
Mhm.
reliability in the data we have, because we all the time we are living and taking decisions in possible scenarios of a possible result we have, because you never know. If
Yeah,
an insurer decides to cancel a policy, then you have to refund the premium. Then a claim comes. The insured didn't know he has insurance, so he decides to claim after 3, 4, 5 years, and then the reserve is open. It's a business that do not behave in the way in which other industries behave. We
yeah, but
rely on projections. We rely in what in the future.
yeah, but I think it's also hard for founders to get this knowledge from the industry because it always seemed to me that it's a kind of closed sector and most of the entities are very big. So it's just hard to have this in-house knowledge on how the business works, your lines work, your business lines works, etc. Especially for the founders of tech companies.
Yes, I have seen some successful insurtechs coming from ex
Yeah,
insurance sector employees. Because
yeah,
they understand what's the pain or the opportunity in the sector. They understand how this industry operates. So they have that knowledge. They just need a partner who is tech savvy, and
yeah.
they design good, interesting tools. The thing is
Mhm.
that many of those tools are very easy to replicate.
Okay, yeah. So
I
that's the
have
threat. So,
not seen so far tools that really complex to replicate.
yeah, that's actually, yeah, that's probably also why so many founders are very
Yeah,
um
and the second advice will be do it very fast, because this scenario is changing all the time. I have seen investment in previous companies where I work, millionaire investment. This tool is coming, is going to change everything, is a state of the art. And then 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and when the tool finally arrives,
like,
you can use just 10% of that because
yeah,
now
it's
it's
a new
obsolete.
business. Yeah, okay. So be fast. Be fast.
Yeah,
That would
be very
be.
fast, understand our business, partner with an expert of our industry, and the other one is be fast. Take the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity very fast, because all the time the market is changing, the risks are changing, so we need to be very fast. I'm just going to put an example. Some years ago, a broker designed, the automobile insurance comparison, making deal with different automobile insurance companies, and then you jump into the platform, and you get the better price or the better coverage and so on. After a year, there were like three or four platforms providing the same.
Of course.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
so
But be
that's why
fast.
my bet is, how can we use IoT jointly with an insurance company to make uh, a value proposition more sustainable than
Mm-hmm.
just an experiment and going very fast, and.
Mm-hmm. Sure, sure. That's insightful.
It was a pleasure for me having this opportunity to talk a little bit how I see this industry, and more related to technology. That is something that I can say that that's our main weakness, technology as an industry. But that's why our focus as a company in investing
Mm-hmm.
is investing time, investing money in trying to take advantage of new technologies and improve the experience of our insurers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Of course. Thank you for that. And our guest today was Omar Mendoza. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
Stay in touch with us, subscribe to our podcast, give us a like, comment, or share. If you want to reach out personally, you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram.